Okay, I can see the numbers going up there, which is brilliant. So we'll make a start. As I said, hello and welcome to our first webinar of 2022. And if I can still say a happy new year to you as goodness me, as we've rapidly approached the end of January already, but I do hope that you all had a wonderful sort of holiday break and that you are having a good January as far as we've started so far. I'm presenting today's webinar with my colleague Natalie Wood. So good morning, Natalie.
Good morning. Thanks very much for letting me join. It's nice to be here and welcome everybody.
You're very welcome, Natalie. Thank you for joining me. Natalie is one of our solicitors in the employment team. And for those who don't know me, I'm Emma O'Connor. I'm a director in the employment team, and I also head up our HR training academy. And it's absolutely brilliant to be with you all today. And for those of you who don't know Boyes Turner, we are a commercial law firm based in the Thames Valley, but we service clients in London and the South East, across the whole of the United Kingdom, Europe, and also globally as well. In the employment team, we offer HR support, litigation support. We also have a very, very busy and growing business immigration team and lots of work coming in with that, some of which we will touch upon today. Also, we have a training arm as well, where we offer training for managers, HR teams, and wider employee populations. And I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about some of the opportunities you can get involved in as well as we go through today's webinar. Just a bit of housekeeping. As ever, we are live, so please bear with us. If you have any tech issues, pop it in the chat and I will do my best to either speak louder or try and help you as best I can do. But as always and as ever, this is a general overview. So if you have any specific queries or specific questions about anything we've discussed today or want some HR support or advice, then please do get in touch with us separately, and I'll be sending out details of how you can do that. If you want to talk to us, you want to share ideas, if you want to hear about other topics, then again, there's a survey form that you can complete, or again, please do get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. So a bit of Groundhog Day. I think probably for the last however many months I've started with a COVID slide. So let's not break with tradition, shall we, in 2022. But, you know, we do see today it is the ending of the Plan B restrictions. We saw that obviously the work from home mandate that ended in the afternoon of the 19th of January for any of those that were keen to return to work in the afternoon of the 19th. But certainly that work from home order that is now gone. We also see, don't we, today, end of mask mandates and obviously the ending of certain COVID certification to enter certain venues. But again, that has been left very much up to individual venues to decide if they wish to continue with some certification process. Other things to mention, we saw, didn't we, and we heard the Prime Minister talking about potentially the ending of the isolation periods, and that's looking likely to be sometime in March. But again, you know, as with all these things, we await details. And also as part of Operation Ramp Down, looking at ending the free lateral flow tests that I know many employers rely on. Looking likely that they are going to go at least in sort of a free basis from July this year. So certainly businesses will welcome the ending of the restrictions today. I think it's more about, isn't it, that confidence and that certainty that we will have moving forward. But you know, I think COVID and COVID recovery will be a legacy for this year and certainly in years to come, and really thinking about how the lockdowns and the working from home mandates, how they've affected obviously your business, how they've affected your clients, your bottom line, but also your people as well. And I think as we sort of reflect on this, what we're going to do is that I'm going to have a look at some of the HR trends that may be coming across your desks, or topics that are being raised in your boardroom. And then Natalie will have a look at a bit of crystal ball gazing and what we predict may happen, maybe this year or certainly 2023 and perhaps beyond, in the proposed employment bill. So we're going to sort of split the discussion, but I think with this sort of continuing theme of, how will lockdowns, working from home, how will this impact, and how much of that is being reflected in the legislation and the employment changes that we're seeing coming through. So if we sort of have a think about what some of the HR trends might be, and certainly some of the things that I'm seeing in terms of what I'm talking to clients about, what I'm being asked to speak about or write articles about, really thinking about some of these HR trends. Whether we call it flexible, hybrid or dynamic, certainly many businesses are thinking about how they want to use their office space, how they want to reorganize the way people work. They're taking on board perhaps what's worked and what hasn't worked over the last sort of, nearly 2 years, and thinking about how they can make that work for their business moving forward. In terms of where we might be thinking about that in terms of legal risks and consequences, certainly spoke a lot last year, and I sort of urge you to go and sort of check out our previous webinars, and I'll pop the links up, but certainly around that sort of flexible working issue. When you've got those individual flexible working requests, obviously we need to think very carefully about what that means in terms of complying with those requests. So obviously making sure that we've got that 3-month window to complete the process, and remembering that if you're going to hold an appeal or have to sort of do something outside of that 3-month window, we need to get permission, or we need to write to the employee to say that we're going to be extending that. Those time limits are, we think we've got a long time, but actually if you've got to do some investigations, if you've got to sort of, postpone meetings, that 3-month period obviously can be can sort of go over the 3 months. So please do watch that. And we have had case law on that last year. The other point to mention about obviously the flexible working requests, and Natalie will talk about this, obviously when we think about sort of future developments, obviously we've got those 8 statutory grounds. And I think, we just need to be very careful and very clear as to what statutory ground we are relying on, and what is our reason for that? What is our justification for turning down a request? Because that's going to have some knock-on effects when we then go on to think about, okay, what are the consequences if we turn down a request? What are the legal risks there in terms of the equality laws, particularly around indirect sex discrimination, and possibly sort of disability discrimination as well, depending on what the request is for. And also we see those themes, we see those risks of Equality Act breaches when we think about businesses that want to change their working from home policies. So individual requests, so the individual asking to work 3 days, 4 days, compressed hours, whatever that working arrangement might be. We then see issues, don't we, where organisations are saying, okay, well, we want you to work X and Y, and this is how we want you to split it. And what we saw last year, we saw cases coming through which were not about individual requests, but actually when the business sought to change working policies across the board or for specific teams, and the impact that those changes had on individuals who had perhaps caring responsibilities or childcare responsibilities. So it's very much about, when you're thinking about dynamic working or flexible working or hybrid working, really think about the impact that those changes will have on not just teams, but also on individuals. So it's really about, knowing your people, knowing your teams, and being able to anticipate where those issues might be. And I've come up with my cunning 4 C's. which, you know, when you're thinking about this, it's really important to be consistent, to have that consistent policy or that consistent message across the business. I think we need to communicate, so talk to our people, talk to our family leave, people who are going off on family leave, to get a gauge, an idea, nothing set in stone, but just to get a sort of an idea about what they might be thinking about. Communicate with your staff, what are their thoughts, what are they thinking? And then obviously we need to then consider, and we need to think, you know, we've got an individual request situation, we've got those 8 grounds, but we need to consider the request, and we need evidence to be able to support why it is we say that a role cannot be worked flexibly or be worked in the way that the individual wants it to be. And the last C is compromise. You know, we do have to have some reality checks here from employees and also employers. If you are not offering flexible working, then, you know, your competitors will be. So there needs to be a bit of a reality check. You know, employees might not be able to work all their time from home, but also if you're not offering an element of flexibility, what does that mean? And again, that sort of ties in nicely, doesn't it, with this, you know, great reshuffle, you know, great resignation, whatever we want to call it. And I think, you know, we have seen it, and we've seen that, you know, within our own organisation, individuals who've actually thought, well, do you know what, let's go and see what you know, what life's like somewhere else. And I do think, and I've, you know, been writing a lot about this idea of, well, you know, if I can work anywhere, well, can I work for anyone? And perhaps those geographical barriers that we thought were there, perhaps with this sort of, you know, the flexibility now, have they been broken down? And can perhaps people think about, well, you know, there's a great job that's, you know, in Birmingham, or a great job that's in London or in Bristol, and or maybe further afield. And actually, you know, what does that mean to me? And so I think there has been a lot of soul searching going on within organisations. And, you know, yes, people leave for all sorts of reasons. And this may be just a short-term phenomenon as people, you know, have a rethink about, you know, where they are, you know, what job they're doing, who they're doing it for. And perhaps we will see this sort of, you know, settling down. But, you know, people leave roles, don't they, for all sorts of reasons. Pay, benefits, you know, flexibility, location, manager as well. Don't forget, you know, we talk a lot about people don't leave organisations, they leave a manager. So again, you know, some sort of soul searching there about, you know, managers and how we manage our people. But, you know, when people leave, it does have an impact. It can create instability, can't it, within teams. It can affect our productivity. It costs a lot of money, doesn't it? It costs a lot of money to recruit and to train people, and also, you know, the time that takes as well. But also, you know, if we are losing staff, the pressure that puts on the people who remain. And again, you know, that might be sort of the snowball effect that, you know, we've got too much work, I need to leave. So then there's too much work, so we need to leave. So I think, you know, we need to sort of think about how we can support the individuals who are staying, as well as those thinking about those individuals that have left as well. And I do think a big part of this will come down to engagement. And I think, you know, where perhaps money is not you know, can't be the sort of the driving factor for a business, you know, what else is there? So is it, you know, the benefits? Is it the flexibility? You know, what are our values? What's our culture? And, you know, do we offer this sort of, you know, personal focus in terms of development and career development? You know, training, you know, is a really big part of what people are looking for. And actually you can gain a lot from spending and investing a relatively small amount of money in terms of your returns. And I think, again, you know, this culture of inclusivity as well, you know, I think it's a real opportunity to be able to align your company values and expectations, again, with what your employees are looking for, and have that balance between, you know, company goals and client goals and expectations as well, with that sort of employee experience. So I think there are some opportunities there for organizations. And, you know, I've touched on the sort of HR trends, and I think, you know, having a culture of inclusivity, I think is going to be even more important, particularly when we think about the impact of lockdowns and of COVID on our workforce. I attended a Women in Automotive event last year. It was a global event. And, you know, there was a speaker there from Germany who was talking about the impact on women in the workplace, really, and the fact that, you know, so many women have left the workplace for a variety of reasons, primarily because of, you know, the costs and lockdowns and having to, you know, look after children. So, you know, there is going to have to be, I think, you know, an opportunity there for businesses to really look at, okay, how family friendly are we? And again, that's going to be quite interesting when Natalie talks about some of the legislative proposals. But again, you know, how can we support our women in the business? You know, how can we give them that? It's that flexibility or that,
Welcome to the free voicemail service. You have one new voice message. New voice message from 0.
And I think that we just need to be very think about how we do manage our expectations within the workplace. But I think it goes beyond that. And I think, you know, those of you who've been to my training events before or have been sort of following Boyce Turner's training for a while, we talked a lot about generational diversity, didn't we, a few years ago? And I think now we need to think about it again, because for, you know, the first time, if you like, we've got managers who are managing, you know, boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, Gen Zs, you know, all with competing needs, all with competing wants, desires, and personalities. So I think it might be a time to really think about how we manage our differences in terms of our generations, and thinking about, does that one size fits all, particularly when we think about benefits and working hours and working patterns. Again, can we think about how that fits with our different generations? And I do think, you know, this idea about culture more generally, having this inclusive culture more generally, and what that means for your business. And I think, you know, thinking about how open are we as an organization, how comfortable are our managers, do we champion mental health well-being, do we have a menopause champion, do we really have that culture where people can talk about, you know, their health issues or their differences openly. And, you know, it's very much about, you know, we talk the talk, but are we walking the talk as well? So I think that's going to be a big part of it. Gender pay gap as well, that's going to be coming out, you know, the sort of the changes that we saw in terms of reporting dates and deadlines. We're back to normal this year. So, you know, we've got that April date. What do, you know, have a look back. Where were we in terms of our gender pay gap? What were we saying that we were going to do to support women and to close those gaps? What have we done? Have they been successful? If not, what do we need to do? So really do think about gender pay gap reporting. And again, if you want to talk to us about that report, even if you're not caught. And interestingly, we have a number of clients who come to us who aren't caught by the 250 employee cap. And they do actually want to do their gender pay gap reporting. I think that's brilliant, because it's a fantastic way to be able to track your progress. And when you know, if and when you are caught by the 250 employee rule there, you're ready to go. And actually, you've kind of hit the ground running, because you've got your plans in place and you can demonstrate, look, we've been doing this for a number of years, and this is where we are, and this is how we've closed the gap. So I think there's great opportunities there for employers, even if you're not caught by these regulations. So talk to us about gender pay gap reporting. And again, talk to us about EDI training, EDI awareness training, but also really importantly, that legal training. When did you last train your managers and your employees on the legal risks associated with breaches of equality laws? Really, really important. And we saw that highlighted in case law last year. So again, that really should be on the HR to-do list. Purpose of the office, question mark. What do we want from our office space? What do we want our office space to be? For many of you, it will continue to be a place where people will come, whether that's 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, but it will be a place of work. For others of you, you might be thinking, okay, well, why do we want to come together? What do we want from sort of the bricks and mortar that we have? So I think there's an opportunity to really think about what we want to do and what we want to achieve. I think, you know, we need to sort of flex in to our plans, whether that's with working hours of work, days of work. I think we need to think about how we can make those plans flexible. I think where we are now and where we might be in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months will be different. So I think we just need to sort of, you know, think about how we can adapt to changes and attitudes and what people want, because it will change in the next, you know, in the next few months or so. So again, it's about creating something that's flexible, but not making it too inflexible. So I think, you know, just sort of work in some sort of review periods as well. But, you know, ultimately, a lot of this will come down to your managers and how are your managers engaging with their people. Are we still holding those really, you know, those meetings for meetings' sake? Are we still very much in that transactional, reactive mode where we're having meetings and it's all, you know, work-based? Are we now thinking more about, okay, how can we make our meetings more purposeful? How can we ensure that we're still having those check-ins and those one-to-ones, which are still really important, you know, not just to ensure that your people are okay where they're working, but also that they've got those plans in place for career development. You know, we're thinking about engaging our people. So again, you know, thinking about our managers, how can we help and support them? You know, we ran lots of courses in 2020 and last year around, you know, managing hybrid teams, managing remote workers. So, you know, there is a need for this. Your managers, you know, then it's not something that perhaps comes to some managers naturally. So how can we help and support them? But I think, you know, in terms of those skill sets, it's really about having that ability to demonstrate, you know, resilience and empathy. I think transparency, particularly where you've got people that are in, people that are out, you know, how can we ensure that work is being allocated in a fair and equitable way? Again, thinking back to our sort of EDI approach, you know, avoiding that, you know, out of sight, out of mind. And I think that as we sort of, you know, move forward and we sort of find our way, I think, you know, supporting and encouraging our managers in this way and giving them the ability to have training, I think will really, really help and support them with sort of like, you know, the next phase. And, you know, at Boys Turner, you know, we are, you know, we're kind of helping and supporting our you know, our webinar attendees and thinking about, you know, my 2022 program. And I've just want to sort of put there a couple of events that you might want to join us on our next 2 webinars, really thinking about, okay, if we haven't got money, how can we support our people and how can we engage them? So I'm going to be talking next month about financial well-being. It's not giving people financial advice, but it's about thinking about, okay, we've got programs for physical well-being and mental health well-being. But again, you know, financial well-being, I think, is going to be another, you know, big area where employers can really make a difference and support their people. You know, we've got energy bills, cost of living, you know, we've got employees who are perhaps still very worried about their finances. So I think, you know, what can employers do and what are the benefits, I think, of supporting your employees? And similarly with the webinar that I'm going to be running in March with Paul Linsell, who's a family partner at Boys Turner. You know, there's this tendency now, isn't there, to bring our whole self to work, and often, you know, issues outside of work can impact in work. So again, you know, having this awareness and again, how can we support our people who are having challenging times outside of the workplace, and what the knock-on effect could that be in terms of work, productivity, but also absence as well. Just again, it's about having that awareness, isn't it? And about being able to do more, but with less. So I think what we're seeing in that HR space, those HR trends, is very much around sort of, you know, getting people back to work. We're going to have some sort of, you know, legacy of lockdowns, legacy of COVID, of course we are. But, you know, we do have some issues that are sort of, you know, feeding through both the HR trends and the legislative trends. And Natalie, you're going to talk to us now about some of the legislative trends, aren't you, that perhaps we're going to see sort of this year and possibly into next?
Yes, absolutely. So as you're saying, Emma, there's been lots of synergy with some family-friendly laws. At the moment, we're awaiting the employment bill, which had originally been promised in 2019 in the Queen's speech, and it's still yet to come into force. It will include likely a number of measures, including statutory carers leave, statutory neonatal leave and pay, and extension of protection against redundancy. So sort of taking those in turn, statutory carers leave. So the government published its response to the 2020 consultation on carers leave and confirmed plans to introduce new entitlement to statutory carers leave for employees. And these rights will be day one rights. And essentially, employees will be able to take up to 5 working days of unpaid leave per year so that they can provide or arrange care for a dependent with a long-term care need. So that could be somebody that's got a long-term illness or injury covered by the Equality Act, or even issues relating to old age or terminal illness. And the idea is that the leave could be taken in one block or as individual full or half day pieces. And employees would be required to give notice that there's at least twice the length of time that they're going to be taking off, in addition to 1 day. So if an employer were to take 1 day's leave, then they would obviously have to give 3 days notice of that. So really what we're seeing here is that it's intended to help employees with foreseen circumstances rather than unexpected. So what do we mean by dependent? Essentially, it's going to follow the existing definition as set out in other sorts of statutory right to time off, such as so the right to take time off for dependents, and would include caring for a child, partner, or parent. Importantly, employers should note that where employees do take time off to care, time off carers leave, they will be protected from detriment. So if they are detrimented for taking the leave, or if they're discriminated against in any way for taking the leave, or even really if employers prevent them from taking the leave, it could cause ramifications. It could potentially lead to an employee claiming constructive dismissal, bringing a claim for discrimination, including associative discrimination. So employers really do need to make sure they're in front of this. It isn't clear when the legislation will come into force, but employers really should start thinking now about how they'll deal with these requests. Just even simply how employees will submit them, how they might approve the requests, to reviewing staffing levels to ensure sufficient cover is in place. And as Emma touched on earlier, again, it's really important to make sure that HR and managers have had the training and policies are updated, and all of these things are communicated to the workforce. Another of the provisions we're expecting to see in the employment bill, again, it's to be confirmed if it will come into force this year or perhaps later, is the right for employees to take statutory neonatal leave and pay. So parents of babies which are admitted into hospital as a neonate and who are 28 days old or less will be eligible for neonatal leave and pay, which will be subject to certain qualifying conditions, where the admission of the baby lasts for a continuous period of 7 days or more, and parents will be able to take up to 12 weeks statutory leave for this. This will be a day one right. However, the entitlement to statutory neonatal pay will be available for qualifying employees, and that'll probably be along the same lines as we see with other statutory family leave payments. And again, employers just need to be mindful about this and ensure that managers and HR are trained, because employees will be protected against suffering a detriment for having exercised this statutory right, and would be protected from discrimination, and they also would have the right to return to the same job after taking any neonatal leave. And then also just coming on to another aspect which is expected to come into force with the employment bill, And that's the extension of protection against redundancy. And essentially, the idea being is that people who are pregnant, who are on maternity leave, who've taken adoption or shared parental leave, will have additional protections against redundancy. So at the moment, women who are pregnant do have additional protections in relation to redundancy. So the proposed extension to this protection would essentially mean that pregnant women, for example, would be entitled to have would be covered under a protected period of 6 months after they've returned to work, and essentially that would prevent them from being made redundant, except where the business is closing down, ceasing work in a particular area that the woman was employed. As ever, there will be nuances between different forms of leave. So the practical and legal differences between shared parental leave and other forms of leaves would probably require a different approach.
No, absolutely. And I think one really interesting point there about the statutory neonatal leave and obviously the statutory pay is that we need to obviously understand how that fits with maternity, paternity, because certainly the sort of the understanding at the moment is that that neonatal leave would be then in addition to maternity leave, and how that all fits, or does it get sort of, you have it like with shared parental leave, you have your pot of leave and you've used X amount for this amount, and then you've got Y amount for something else. So I think there's quite a few interesting, as you said, nuances around how that works. So I think, just really kind of watch this space on that neonatal leave, and obviously what the reporting, might be, particularly when, it's going to be rushed, so I think just need to sort of watch this space on that, and obviously wait and see, particularly with the nuances between the current leave. And what other proposals have we got, Nat?
So there's also a proposal to make right to request a flexible working, request another day one right. At the moment, employees need to have 26 weeks qualifying service, so obviously that's a bit of a change. And the reason really for that is the government had released a consultation called Making Flexible Working the Default, and it published the outcome to that in September 2021. And essentially this move is a response to that consultation. In addition, we may also see the establishment of a single labour market enforcement agency, and that body would be responsible for enforcing basic rights of vulnerable workers, and would seek to enforce breaches relating to things like modern slavery, breaches of the national minimum wage, statutory sick pay and holiday pay. And they potentially will have the powers to enforce and tackle and enforce non-compliance, for example, issuing financial penalties. So it'll be really interesting to get some more details about how that may work and what that body will look like. In addition, we might also see a law which would require employers to pass on all tips and service charges to their workers. And finally, the right for all workers, including those on 0-hour contracts, to request a more predictable and stable contract after 26 weeks of service, which we'd expect to see, including certainty about the number of days and hours that they'll be expected to work, amongst other things.
Yeah, and that was something that came out from the Good Work Plan, which now seems an age ago, but that was one of the proposals out of the Good Work Plan. So again, it's been a long time coming, and as Natalie said, we are still waiting for the publication of the employment bill, let alone the individual regulations, which will effectively bring in, the employment bill will be the intention document, if you like, but then we'll still have to wait for all the separate statutory instruments to come in to bring all these proposals into being. So yeah, it could be a while, because all we know and all we hear is, when parliamentary time allows, and certainly not allowing for it at the moment. Our old favourites, Natalie.
Yes,
weights and measures.
Indeed. So what changes can we expect then to see from April 2022 with regards to statutory pay? So statutory sick pay will increase to £99.35 per week. Statutory maternity, paternity, adoption, shared parental pay and maternity allowance will also increase to £156.66 per week. From the 1st of April 2022, the national living wage for workers aged 23 and over will also rise up to £9.50, and that's going up from £8.91, which it is currently. And the national minimum wage will also increase. We've got the figures on the screen there, but for 21 to 22-year-olds, it will go up to £9.18, 18 to 20-year-olds, £6.83, and 16 to 17-year-olds, £4.81. Apprentice rate will be £4.81, and then accommodation offset rate will be £8.70. In addition, some other good news, the government has announced that national insurance contributions will rise by 1.25% for most workers from 6th of April, and that's to fund a social care levy.
I think that might be another one to watch, whether that indeed comes in. There's lots of things that are bubbling around at the moment in the press about whether these changes will come in, and I think that that tax rise is one of them. So you know, watch this space.
Yeah, so just moving on now to right to work checks and business sort of immigration side of things. The Home Office's temporary adjusted right to work check process that was introduced to address the logistical issues created by the pandemic is scheduled to end on the 6th of April 2022. Online checks for those with biometric residence cards, residence permits and frontier working permits will become mandatory also from the same date, so that's the 6th of April. So employers will need to think about appropriate changes to internal processes to be able to manage right to work checks in a compliant manner. And employers must continue to be mindful of the appropriate steps to take on discovering that a prospective or existing employee has failed to apply for status under the EU settlement scheme on time, despite being entitled to do so. So I think I'll hand back to Emma now.
That's really, yeah, thanks, Nat. That's really helpful. And just on that, on those sort of right to work checks, if you do have any questions about right to work checks, and I think, you know, with this, I think, you know, right to work check training for your HR teams, for your recruiters, and obviously for managers, it is going to be really key here, because, you know, the penalties of getting this wrong are really hefty. So again, you know, right to work check training, I think I would certainly be adding that to the list. Also sponsorship licenses as well, you know, particularly when we think about businesses who are wanting and thinking about, you know, their recruitment plans. If you're not finding that you've got the sort of the local labour that you require, or the skills you require, you know, what are those shortage occupations? We see the list is growing on that. We've now got care workers have been included on that list as well as a shortage occupation, obviously after the changes with regards to mandatory vaccinations there. And so there are, you know, there are, you know, issues for businesses around business immigration. So, you know, please get in touch. We've got Chris Harbour, Head of Immigration, and his team. So again, you know, get in touch with me or get in touch with Chris directly on that. So an action-packed 2022 and you know, maybe 2023 as well. And I think, you know, when we think about, you know, where we are, so, you know, 2022, you know, in terms of employment tribunals, you know, the claim numbers are still, you know, claims are still coming in. In terms of our team, you know, we have a busier than ever litigation diary. But what we are seeing is there is still that backlog. So if I can, you know, just give you some sort of rough stats, you know, the average time between receipt of the ET1 by the tribunal to the listing of the claim ranges from around, you know, 300 days to nearly 400 days, you know, so we do have cases that are being listed in sort of 2023 and beyond. So we do have that you know, that shortfall, that backlog, despite tribunals moving more to sort of online hearings. So again, you know, that's going to become, you know, that's going to be a feature of your HR diary as well, litigation. Obviously, we've talked about how the COVID recovery. I think, you know, the whole issue around confidence, business confidence, employer confidence, employee confidence, and that certainty, as we can have that certainty that we're going to be able to sort of move forward and drive forward, and we're not going to have this sort of, you know, flip-flopping between you know, rules and working from home again. And I think that's something that businesses will be looking for. I think some of the key themes, as I've said, are going to be obviously, you know, staying up to date with guidance. I think, you know, we need to include the point here that you know, again, we are seeing a lot of questions as well around, you know, health and social care work, around the sort of the proposed changes from the 1st of April as well, with regards to sort of mandatory vaccination. So just want to sort of raise that point as well. But certainly, you know, communication, listening to your people, taking advice, you know, getting them on board with, you know, sort of the journey that you're proposing to take, being adaptable, you know, being flexible, being that agile employer. Be open as well. You know, we've done some brilliant things over the last, you know, nearly 2 years. You know, what's worked, but more importantly, what hasn't worked, and how can we improve, and how can we make those changes. And I think, you know, be open as well. How do you want your business to be remembered, and how do you want to be remembered as a manager as well? And I think, you know, yes, there's going to be some soul searching around the sort of, you know, why people are leaving, and, you know, how can we attract our new talent and retain our talent? But, you know, what are some of the issues that we're going to be seeing? As always, please do take advice. I'll be sending out an email afterwards with details, but, you know, do keep in touch. And I think the most important thing is obviously going to be balance, isn't it? Balancing the needs of the business against, and the need for growth, but obviously against the needs of your people as well. And, you know, I have been saying, you know, we're still in that marathon. It's still a marathon, not a sprint, but hopefully we are getting closer to that finish line. So thank you so much for joining us today. That's very much a sort of a, you know, a gallop through sort of where we're seeing a bit of crystal ball gazing, which I think is always good to do, because, you know, these issues may not be things that are coming across your desk now, but they are impacting other employers or having an impact within your sector. And I think it's always best to have, you know, one eye on those future issues as well, particularly around the legislation. And I think there is an opportunity there for employers when we're talking about engagement, and we're talking about, you know, perhaps being able to offer more but with less. Think about some of those family-friendly changes which are proposed under the employment bill. Is there something that maybe as a business we could perhaps think about offering now to our people, so we get ahead of that curve? So I think there are opportunities to think about how we can be that flexible and adaptable employer as well. So again, you know, with all challenges comes opportunities. But that leaves me to thank Natalie for joining me today. And
thanks for having me. It's been good. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
And no hitches.
And no hitches. No, well, we've got a minute left. We've got a minute left or so. But no, thank you so much, everyone who's joined us today. The sort of the numbers that have signed up have been absolutely amazing. So thank you so much. And do, you know, stick with us. The plan is to do the sort of the monthly webinars. So we've got financial wellbeing in February, and then looking at how we can support our people with external issues internally, and we've got that coming up in March. So do keep in touch. If you're not already signed up to receive our email updates, we provide a weekly newsletter. If you're not signed up to receive our invitations to not only our webinars but also to our training events, we've got some training events coming up in March, including in June we are relaunching the HR Masterclass. Really excited about that. I've missed it. I have missed it. So really looking forward to getting that. Thank you so much for the great messages we've had on the chat. You know, really, really great to hear that you found that interesting. So brilliant. And we will see you in February. Thank you very much indeed, and have a very enjoyable rest of the day. Thank you.